China just launched a train that doesn't touch the ground, doesn't fight the air, and moves faster than a Boeing 747. While America spent a decade and $450 million on the same idea and never broke highway speed, China quietly built it inside a defense contractor, broke the world record twice in 1 year, and already has a commercial opening date on the calendar. This is not the future of transportation. It is already happening. A 1-ton steel vehicle sits completely still on a 400-meter track, heavier than a family SUV, not moving. Then it goes 0 to 700 kilometers per hour in 2 seconds. That is 435 miles per hour from a dead stop in the time it takes to blink twice. The camera trying to capture the moment catches nothing but blur and mist. The vehicle is moving faster than the camera can resolve it cleanly. State broadcaster CCTV airs the footage nationally the same day. And just like that, China sets the fastest superconducting electric maglev acceleration ever recorded anywhere on Earth. But here is the thing that most people are missing about that record. It was not China's first. 6 months earlier, in June 2025, the exact same team had fired a vehicle down a 600-meter track and hit 650 kilometers per hour in 7 seconds. That was already a world record. Then they came back, shortened the track by 200 meters, and went faster. This is not a country celebrating an achievement and moving on. This is a country that treats its own world records as a starting point and immediately asks what comes next. And before you think this is just a laboratory experiment with no real destination, this is being built by NUDT, China's National University of Defense Technology, the same institution that develops guidance systems for China's most advanced military hardware. This did not come from a startup with a pitch deck and a dream. It came from the most technically capable defense research institution in the country. That matters enormously when you start to understand where this technology is actually going. So what exactly is this machine? Because calling it a fast train does not come close to capturing what it actually is. The official name is T-Flight, and the reason China calls it a flying train is not marketing language. It is a literal description of what the vehicle does. A conventional train has wheels. Wheels create friction. Friction creates heat, noise, mechanical wear, and a hard physical ceiling on how fast any vehicle can travel before the wheels simply cannot hold. T-Flight has no wheels. Superconducting magnets inside the vehicle interact with electromagnetic coils built into the guideway beneath it. The train floats. Zero contact with the track. Zero friction. Nothing touching anything at all. But levitation alone only solves half the problem. At extreme speeds, air resistance does not just slow a vehicle down, it becomes a wall. At 1,000 kilometers per hour, the energy required to push through the normal atmosphere is so enormous that no practical propulsion system can overcome it efficiently. So T-Flight eliminates the air. The train runs inside a sealed tube. Most of the atmosphere inside that tube is pumped out, reducing pressure from the normal 15 pounds per square inch down to as low as 1 pound per square inch. The train is not moving through the air, it is moving through near nothingness. No wheels, no air resistance. Just electromagnetic force and an almost perfect vacuum. This is why they call it a flying train, because in every meaningful physical sense, that is exactly what it is. Now here is the engineering detail that reveals just how serious China is about making this work. The 2-kilometer test track surface in Datong was flattened to a tolerance of just 0.3 millimeters, not centimeters, millimeters, across 2 full kilometers. The tunnel diameter was held accurate to 2 millimeters along its entire length. These are not civil engineering standards. These are aerospace manufacturing standards, the kind of precision you apply to telescope mirrors and rocket components. China applied them to a train track built in under 2 years in Shanxi province. And then there is the communication problem, one that most Hyperloop programs have quietly avoided talking about. At speeds approaching 1,000 kilometers per hour inside a sealed vacuum tube, standard wireless communication systems fail completely. The signals cannot penetrate the tube walls reliably at that velocity. A research team from Southeast University solved it by installing 2 parallel cables directly inside the tube wall itself, creating a dedicated 5G corridor running the entire length of the line. The result, full high-speed connectivity at near sonic speeds. Passengers traveling faster than a Boeing 747 would be able to stream video, make calls, and work normally. Every technical objection answered one by one. So where does this go from here? Because the records are impressive, the engineering is extraordinary, but the roadmap is what should genuinely get your attention. Phase 1 is already done. The 2-kilometer full-scale test facility in Datong, Shanxi, built by CASIC, China's State Aerospace and Defense Corporation, was completed in November 2023. By February January 2024, it had already broken the world record for superconducting maglev speed under non-vacuum conditions, hitting 387 miles per hour and surpassing Japan's long-standing benchmark of 374 miles per hour. By October 2024, the full vacuum integration had been successfully tested, proving that the complete system, track, levitation, tube, and vacuum all worked together simultaneously at speed. Phase 1 delivered everything it promised and then some. Phase 2 is now underway. The track extends to 37 miles, 60 kilometers. The target speed, 1,000 kilometers per hour, 621 miles per hour. Now sit with that number for a moment. A Boeing 747 at full cruise flies at 575 to 600 miles per hour. T-Flight's Phase 2 target is faster than the most iconic commercial aircraft ever built, on the ground, in a tube, no wings, no jet fuel, no airport, no boarding pass, just electromagnetic force in a near vacuum. At that speed, the Beijing to Shanghai journey, currently 6 hours on China's already world-leading high-speed rail network, becomes 90 minutes. The same trip that takes a full working day becomes something you do before lunch. And Phase 2 is not the end. Phase 3 targets 2,000 kilometers per hour, faster than the speed of sound. At that velocity, the distances that currently define China's vast geography, the journeys measured in full days of travel, start to collapse into something unrecognizable. And CASIC's stated ultimate target goes further still, 4,000 kilometers per hour, Mach 3+, faster than an SR-71 Blackbird on the ground, with passengers. The first commercial line is already on the calendar for 2035. Cities are applying to Beijing right now for approval to build the first operational corridors. The Beijing to Shijiazhuang route, the Guangzhou to Shenzhen connection. These are not future conversations. These are current applications sitting on government desks. Now here is the organization actually building all of this, because this is where the story shifts from impressive to something else entirely. CASIC, China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation, is the state-owned entity behind T-Flight. This is not a transportation company. This is the corporation that manufactures China's cruise missiles, ballistic missile defense systems, and space launch vehicles. When China decided to build the world's fastest ground transport system, it did not launch a startup competition or issue a private sector tender. It handed the project to its aerospace and defense industrial complex, and that decision, more than any single speed record, tells you everything about how seriously China intends to win this race. The department inside CASIC, specifically responsible for maglev and electromagnetic propulsion technology, was formally established in January 2018. 7 years later, that same department holds the world speed record, operates a full-scale test facility, and is actively expanding its track to 37 miles, from a standing start to a world record in 7 years, inside a government defense contractor, with no investors to answer to, no quarterly earnings calls to survive, and no competitor threatening to steal the contract. Just a target, a timeline, and the full weight of China's aerospace industrial machine behind it. The construction timeline alone tells you something important. The Datong test facility broke ground in April 2022. The full-scale 2-kilometer track was operational by November 2023. 19 months from groundbreaking to a working world record-breaking facility. For context, a single highway interchange in the United States typically takes 3 to 5 years to complete, and that is without any of the precision engineering, vacuum systems, or superconducting technology that T-Flight required. China built the most advanced ground transportation test facility on Earth in under 2 years, in a province best known for coal mining, and China did not start from zero. Underneath T-Flight sits the most advanced rail infrastructure on the planet. China's high-speed rail network currently stretches 45,000 kilometers, the largest in the world by an enormous margin. That network took 2 decades to build, and in doing so created something more valuable than the tracks themselves. It created a construction workforce that knows how to build fast and build precisely, a civil engineering knowledge base accumulated across thousands of projects, a regulatory framework already adapted to approving large-scale rail infrastructure at speed. T-Flight is not being built in a vacuum of experience. It is being built on top of the deepest rail construction knowledge base any country has ever assembled. Then add the coordination factor, NUDT providing the breakthrough acceleration research, CASIC providing the full-scale infrastructure and manufacturing, Southeast University solving the 5G communication problem, 3 separate state institutions working simultaneously on different pieces of the same puzzle, not competing for the same government grant, not protecting their intellectual property from each other, not waiting for one team to publish before the next team can proceed, all pointed at the same target, sharing results in real time, moving together. That model of coordinated state-directed research is how China took a concept from white paper to world record in 7 years, and it is the same model that the United States, for all its engineering talent, currently has no equivalent of. Now look at America, because this is where the story becomes genuinely difficult to sit with. The Hyperloop was not a Chinese idea, it was not a European idea, it was not born in a government laboratory in Beijing or a defense facility in Shanxi. In August 2013, Elon Musk, an American entrepreneur sitting in California, published a 57-page white paper proposing a high-speed vacuum tube transport system. He called it the Hyperloop. He open-sourced the entire concept, invited anyone in the world to build it, and triggered the biggest wave of transportation startup investment in a generation. The idea that China is now turning into a world record was born in the United States. That is the part that makes this story genuinely uncomfortable. Hyperloop One launched in 2014. Richard Branson came on board. Virgin Group backed it. DP World invested heavily. The total funding raised reached $450 million. The promise was passengers traveling at 1,200 kilometers per hour between American cities, transforming the country's transportation network the way the interstate highway system had done in the 1950s. The actual peak crude speed the company ever achieved after nearly a decade of development, 172 kilometers per hour. 107 miles per hour. That is slower than China's regular high-speed trains from 2008, not T-Flight, not the record-breaking system, China's ordinary everyday intercity trains that have been running for 17 years. On December 31st, 2023, exactly 10 years after Musk's white paper launched the entire movement, Virgin Hyperloop One shut down completely. No commercial contracts, no passengers ever carried above highway speed, assets liquidated. The test track built in the Nevada desert outside Las Vegas was sold off for parts. The most funded Hyperloop company in Western history closed the decade having never moved a passenger faster than a speed that would get you a ticket on most American freeways. $450 million. 10 years, 107 miles per hour, then nothing. Hyperloop TT, the other significant American player, is still technically operating but has faced serious financial difficulties, including reports of unpaid employee salaries and stalled projects. Elon Musk's own Boring Company, the organization founded by the man who wrote the original white paper, abandoned the Hyperloop concept entirely and pivoted to building narrow tunnels for regular Teslas to drive through under Las Vegas. Transport Canada's official 2024 government assessment concluded that Hyperloop technology is unlikely to be ready for real-world application in the near future. 12 years after the concept was born in California, no operational Western system, no passengers, no speed record, no commercial line, nowhere. Put the two stories side by side and the contrast becomes almost surreal. America spent a decade and $450 million and never broke 107 miles per hour. China spent 7 years inside a defense contractor, broke the world record twice in the same calendar year, and has a commercial opening date on the calendar for 2035. The idea was American, the machine is Chinese, and that gap between generating a transformational idea and actually building it at scale is the most important story in global technology right now. But this is bigger than a competition between two countries, because what T-Flight actually unlocks goes far beyond making existing train journeys faster. Speed at this scale does not just improve transportation, it restructures geography. At 1,000 kilometers per hour, cities that are currently too far apart for a realistic daily commute become connected. Regions that are economically isolated because of distance, because the roads are slow and the airports are far, suddenly become part of a connected economic zone. The map does not change, but what the map means changes entirely. Think about what this does to emergency response. a medical evacuation traveling at 600 miles per hour on the ground in any weather with no airport logistics, no runway availability, no air traffic control queue, an organ for transplant surgery moving from donor hospital to receiving hospital in minutes instead of hours, disaster relief supplies reaching an affected region faster than any road or air-based system currently can. Every time critical operation that currently races against distance and traffic gets a system that is faster than commercial aviation and does not need a single airport to operate. China's interior provinces, Shanxi, Gansu, Qinghai, Xinjiang, sit on enormous reserves of natural resources but remain economically disconnected from the coastal manufacturing and export hubs where China's wealth concentrates. The distances are simply too large for road or conventional rail to bridge efficiently. T-Flight at Phase 2 speed connects those interior regions to Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou in the time it currently takes to drive across a single city. That is not a transport upgrade. That is an economic integration of a landmass the size of a continent. The energy comparison with aviation makes the long-term picture even starker. A Boeing 747 burns 10 to 11 tons of jet fuel every single hour of flights. T-Flight runs entirely on electricity, fed by China's rapidly expanding renewable energy grid. No fuel cost volatility, no exposure to oil market disruptions, no carbon emissions per passenger at the point of travel. At the scale China is planning, this is not just a faster alternative to flying. It is structurally cheaper, cleaner, and more energy independent than aviation in ways that matter more with every passing year.